I think most of the questions were very obvious. It was so you could check the answer keys from your PPT or the textbook. I guess I kind of looked at your answers and I realized that some of you had difficulty in answering the changes in sex ratio, right? And what I was expecting, of course, is the first question was about the trend. So based on this table, you could have read what the trend was like over years from 1985 to 2010, which is like you had maybe slightly high sex ratio in 1985 because normal range would be 103 to 108, right? And it was slightly high, and then it kind of skyrocketed in the 1990s, 1990, 95, and then it kind of gradually declined over the years. So that's the basic, information that I expect. Like, what was the trend like, right? It's very simple. And maybe if some student who might have enough time, maybe they could have actually said that, well, the change has been most explicit or most obvious in the third child, right? You can see that over the years, it had 192 in 1990. It was very high, and then it kind of stabilized. So that would give some extra point, right? And the second question was about what are the factors for this very high sex ratio for the second and third child in certain years. That was 1990s, 1990, 95. So what are the factors? I mean, we have discussed this in the class, right? Boy preference, Confucianism, right? Confucianist effect, and maybe medical technology which allowed for sonograms, and maybe the government which have limited the number of children, something like that. And the couple were affected by the family, not just by themselves, but by their parents. There's kind of parental pressure and so on. So think like that. I mean, it's like try to come up with some factors that might have had effect on this particular phenomenon of very high sex ratio for the second and third child. Okay, so I'm looking forward to reading your answers. Okay. And I guess the rest was very obvious, right? Okay, so we are in the middle of trying to understand population changes over the years in Korea, because that's the very basic information about the social change in a particular society. So we have seen that there has been kind of like a very high, very rapid increase of life expectancy, as the last table that we have, last figure that we have discussed the other day, from the period of 1960 to 2006, we had very sharp increase of life expectancy, right? Remember that? Okay, so Koreans live much longer than they were in the 1960s, and that's a blessing for each individual, but maybe that's, as a social level, that could cause a lot of problem, especially if we have very low new births. So the next issue that we have to discuss is the decline of total fertility rate, the so-called TFR. TFR stands for total fertility rate. That's how many babies a woman have during her reproductive years. The blue bar in this particular slide shows the number of total births in real number. So you can see that in 1970s we had about 1 million new births in a year. okay, on the very left, about 1 million new births in a year. By 2010, the number has decreased. Okay, again, so the number of new births was about 1 million in 1970, but number has declined very sharply. By 2010, it was about 500,000, 400,000 to 500,000. So less than half of the number of new births over this 40-year period. If you take a closer look, it's kind of interesting that we had quite a significant increase during the 1990s. You can see that from 1990 to 2000, maybe late 1990s, you have see the trend, number of trend is kind of declining. Well, there was some highs here, but declining, right? It's kind of, you can see that from here to here it's declining. But you have this years when you had actually increase of the new births, probably late 1980s to 1990s, early mid-1990s. So what might explain this increase of births, number of babies, in this particular period? Can anyone come up with any guess? To answer this question, let me ask another question, probably more simple question. Are you familiar with the term baby boom? Okay, baby boom. I know that there was baby boom in many Western countries. When? When you have a baby boom in the US or in Europe in the 20th century, usually baby boom takes place after the war. Yes. So after the Second World War, many Western countries had baby boom. You know, like for various reasons, I guess. But I guess like many males just went to the war, and the economy was bad, and everything else. And then after the war, they came back and they get married, they have children. So there's a baby boom usually in many countries after the big wars. And in Korea, there was a baby boom as well. Can you guess which years did we have baby boom? Not after the World War II, but after another war. What kind of war did we have? Yes, Korean War. 우길 승천. Yeah. Korean War. From Korean War has ceased fire in what year? Yes, 1953. So we had a baby boom from 1953 to usually, they say, 1963. For about 10 years, we have baby boom. Many young people get married and have children, actually many children, 3, 4, sometimes 5. So we had this baby boom, big baby boom, right? And what happens? Actually, that has something to do with this. They were born, if you have a baby boom, right? And they will have many children, and their children, the number of their children will grow as well. Because they have this baby boom who were born from 1950 to 1963. After about 25 to 35 years later, they will get married, this baby boom generation. And since their number is so high, even though their fertility rate, or that is number of baby each couple has is not that might not that high, but since the very number of the baby boom generation is quite high, the number of children who are born when the baby boom have babies would be quite high. So you have another, they say, small baby boom, like this post effect of the baby boom generation. So I belong to baby boom generation in Korea, and since my cohorts are quite big, the number of people are quite big, they will have babies, which means that even though each couple might not have as many babies as the earlier generation, still the number could be high. And then what would happen is actually they would, after probably 25 to 30 years later, they would have smaller, actually then they would kind of decline, but then in particular years they would have small highs, okay? So that's why we had this period when we had small but significant increase in terms of the trend of the population changes over time. Okay, that's actual number of the babies that were born in those years. In terms of the TFR, that is total fertility rate, that is the number of each woman has, is actually declining much more. That doesn't have anything to do with the baby boom generation. So what you see is this sharp decline of the TFR, this red line. Okay. So the lowest actually was in I think it was like 2004, something like that, when we had 1.008, which is like really, really extremely low, because very simple mathematics tells us that if we want to sustain a population as it is, we have to have 2.1. That is, a couple should have 2 babies, or slightly more than 2 babies, and then out of this baby, some baby will die young because of usually high infant mortality, right? So then these 2 will grow up and they will become adults. They would get partners, they get married, they have children again, and so on. This continues. But 1.8 is, that's called, so 2.1 is usually called replacement level. So you have to have 2.1 in order for a society to sustain demographically. And 1.08 was a very, very low number. In recent years, there's slightly high fertility rate, 1.1, 1.13, 1.12. It kind of fluctuates a little bit, but in general, still much below the replace level, and it's we don't really expect any significant change in the near future, and this is considered a serious problem in terms of the future of Koreans' population. So many. 안 보인다고요? 네. 그림이 안 보인다고요? Okay, yeah. Okay. What I had explained actually is about this figure. So TFR is for the red line, and the blue bars are the number of the actual births. Okay. So many actually governments, the previous government, previous Noam Hyun's government, were very concerned about this issue. So they've been trying to find some solution. How can we make or encourage people or young people to have more babies? But as you know, it's not easy. It's very complicated, a very difficult, very challenging issue. This is the same table, like basically the same table, but crude birth rate. That's a number of babies per 1,000 people. 1,000 people. Okay. So out of 1,000 people, we have 9.4 babies. Basically same information, but it shows real number of births per 1,000, new births per 1,000 people, whereas the previous total fertility rate is how many babies each woman has. Okay, but still, I mean, it still shows that was only 9.4 new births per 1,000 population in Korea, and it was about 30. This at the very left, the red line. In 1970, there was about 30 new births, new babies, per 1,000 people. So if there was theoretically, if you have 1,000, if you had a community, a village of 1,000 people, you could see that there was about 30 new babies. Whereas now, it's only 9.4. That also shows that how sharply Koreans' number of new births have been declining. This will give you more comparative view on the TFR. I'm sorry again that there's no English in this particular table, right? In the very middle, you have this red bar. That's the mean, or that's the average of TFR for OECD countries. It's about 1.7, like that, right? The red bar. At the very right, that is, these are on the right side. These are the countries which had high TFR, high total fertility rate. Okay, and on the very right is which country? Any guess? Very right, yes. Oh yeah, how did you know? Do you read Korean? Okay, good. Okay, I thought you were a smart person, but you're like, well, okay, yeah, smart, yes. Israel, yes. Learning Korean is very important. Yeah, in the Korean culture. Yes. On the very right is Israel. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. Can anyone come up with an explanation why Israel has such a high fertility rate? I mean, extremely high. It's like 3.0, and maybe a religion. I don't know. I mean, it's. Can anyone come up with some plausible explanation of why? But it's good that you have made many babies and a happy family and so on. Yeah. Not everyone is, but I guess yeah, mostly. I hope, because in general, I think the TFR, that is, the babies, like having more babies, kind of represents general maybe well-being of a society. Because the couple are fairly happy with their lives. They would have children. They would like to grow the babies and so on, bring up the babies and so on. But if the couple, for whatever reason, whether financially or socially, psychologically, if they feel that, well, no, it's quite difficult, they would say, well, no, let's not have baby. And so that's very important. And also another very important factor for high fertility rate, there's another very important factor, variable for having a high fertility rate. Can anyone guess like what might be an important variable that could critically affect the fertility rate? Usually, the babies are born in a mom. The camera is following us.
I heard the earlier the marriage is, the higher the possibility that there are more children.
Yes, very good. Yes. marriage is very important, also the age of marriage, okay? Because usually, maybe I should move, okay? Usually, even though increasingly there has been increase of babies out of old couples or older females, you know, I mean, that's some kind of biological health concerns for the older pregnancy and marriage, the baby delivery. So usually, if you want to have a baby, in most countries they would find a couple, right? Find a spouse, whether a partner, whether it's like marriage or other forms of engagement, you have to have a partner, right? I say this because in Korea, the number of out-of-wedlock births is very low. But I realized when I was teaching this course last year that the number of babies from like cohabitation or like non-marital relationship is very, very high in many Western countries and also even in Australia as well. So, but anyway, whether it's legal marriagement or other forms of engagement, you have to have a couple. And so, in general, marriage is very important, or living together with partner is very important. And of course, the younger that you have your partner, right, there's more higher chance of having baby. So if you get married at 40, you know, probably you might end up having just one baby. But if you were married at 22, you probably will have enough time to have maybe 10 babies, right? Okay, so that was what happened to my uncles, for example. You know, they get married at 18, 19, 20, and then they had 10 babies. Okay, so most of my uncles had 8, 9, 10 babies. And that was possible because they married younger. Nowadays, increasingly, Koreans, we'll talk about this later in a few weeks, but the age of first marriage, it has been delayed over the years. So I think like as for males, it's early 30s. As for females, it's like late 20s. So whereas it was like early to mid 20s 30 years ago. So it's a big change in the marital age, which significantly affect the number of babies. So the well-being of the society and maybe this marriage age is very important for in general and for the fertility rate. And I guess, I don't know, as for Israel, maybe they have, it would be interesting to find out what their marriage age is, and maybe cultural, religious factors could be a factor for Israel and so on. And so from the right, let me just read them for you, because some of you do not read Korean Hangul. Israel was number 1, Iceland, New Zealand. I've been to New Zealand and the people were very happy. You know, like they were maybe bored. They're sometimes very boring and enough time to have more babies, yeah. And Ireland, Mexico, yeah. I think Mexico has maybe, usually Catholics would have, you know, higher fertility rate than Protestants. And Turkey, France, England, Sweden, Norway, Chile, US, Australia. Yes, Australia, I realized that in terms of policy, they were providing more benefits to the young couples. And if they have baby, they would provide some cash support for each baby. Denmark, Finland, Belgium, Netherlands. I guess these are countries quite, you know, in general, in terms of general well-being of the society, they were, you know, living all right, okay? And then Canada, Estonia, they are below the OECD average. Okay, and Luxembourg, Slovenia, Lithuania, Swiss, Greece, Cyprus, Czechia, Bulgaria, Croatia, Austria, And there is Japan. There is Japan. And then Germany. Germany. That's interesting. Why? That's kind of unexpected. Why do the Germany do not have babies? Do you agree with this table? I mean, this is OECD data, I guess. So this is official.
I just heard like maybe a week ago or something, like we have a new record of low fertility rate. So I think it's even lower now, and I think there's like a trend. Actually like double income, no kids. Yeah, so it's declining, and I think I heard as well that now Germany is one of the fastest aging country in the world. So it's like an ongoing theme. Like we're talking about that very often. So I'm rather familiar with it being so low.
You think that has a lot to do with the new lifestyle of like both couple working and trying to enjoy and just instead of like spending money or time for children, they would just have to their own lives. Yeah. Okay. And let's just move on to the left. I'm sorry, the lowest. The lowest TFR goes to Latvia. And then second to that is very sadly or proudly ranked number 2 in the world, Korea, South Korea. So I think that's quite serious sign. I think maybe we are marrying much later than we did, because for many reasons. Maybe job, getting a job has become very important. Having a career, more women working and difficult to find jobs and so on. And then maybe cost of housing, cost of marriage, and cost of providing education to the children. All these kind of factors. And maybe I think many people feel that they're less confident than their parents' generation, if they have baby, what would happen to them in the future. So I think that kind of many factors are reflected in this number. So we need to do something about this, and which we'll discuss later on. Yes, the same. So this table actually has English, so probably it will give a better understanding than the previous figure. So you have Korea, Japan, and other European countries. Germany, 1.33, 1.34, yes, low. Oh, this is saturation. Okay, these posters were actual posters that were displayed in Korea, and very strongly encouraged people or couples not to have too many babies, or they call it family planning. So they had all kind of plannings, economic plans, and then they thought that family planning is very important for economic growth of Korea, because if you have too many people, they will be like spending or eating too much. There will be like a cost for society. So they said, well, if we reduce the number of population, that means that there could be more share for each individuals, each people. So they would have higher per capita GDP if they have, fewer people. It was very serious. As soon as this General Park Jung-hee, General Park Jung-hee became the president. Family planning was one of the important agenda of the regime. The first poster on the left, is 1968. right? Many years ago, in 1968, the Korean character says what? 가족계획, which means family planning. That means that the government or government agencies intervene in the family issues, or even to the body of a woman and man. Okay. Okay, so the government actually has monitored and intervened in this private matter. Actually, fundamentally, it's a private matter or personal matter, personal decision of each couple, and persuaded that you should have 2 babies. That's maximum. That not legal terms, but in terms of continually sending the message. And if you had more than 2 children, you will be disadvantaged in terms of the sex, in terms of tax exemptions and so on. And if you look at this at the very bottom of this poster on the left, it says 가장 효과적이고 안전하고 간단한 루프 장치를 아십니까? 원하시는 분은 보건소나 가족계획 지도원을 찾으십시오. Please translate these for me. Yes. Can anyone translate? Sorry, this is some Korean. Yes. Yeah. Can anyone translate it? Fudan? I know that there are some Korean students who are fluent in Chinese or English, so you can translate into Chinese and then English. They're very all happy, right? They looks like they have done very well in the exam. Yeah, congratulations. All happy, smiling students. Can anyone translate this into English for us? Some Korean students who are studying at Fudan? Yes, let's hear. Microphone, please.
Can I translate for Chinese?
Microphone, do you have microphone, right? Yeah. And I would greatly appreciate your assistance. Or
Can I transfer to Chinese?
excuse me? Yes.
Hello? 들리세요?
Yes, go ahead.
들리세요?
Yes, but please speak louder. Yeah. 조금만 크게 말씀해 주세요. 예. 아니면 마이크를 가까이.
Do you know the stuff that the efficient and safe and simple roof,
Yes.
something
Okay.
like that?
And then
If you want, you can find some hospital or family planning in director.
okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. What would be this translation for group? Yes. Let's give her a big hand. Yes, together. 谢谢, yeah. Thank you very much. Yes. Loop. What is that in English? It's one of the contraceptives, right? To the best of my knowledge, loop. In English, I think this probably is English, but maybe not very commonly used in everyday lives. Because it's kind of, I think, instrument that is placed in women's womb or something like that, so they try to prevent the pregnancy process. It's not very widely used nowadays, but because there are other more efficient contraceptive method. 혹시 구글 검색 뭐 이런 거 없네? In English? I think probably this is English, but kind of Koreanized translation of English or something like that. So anyway, so RUP, they said, is the most efficient and safe contraceptive method. And then they said, please refer to the clinic, the public clinic, or public family planning guide agent. They're trying to tell that, no, let's not have a baby, and they would try to directly intervene in the actual pregnancy process by providing or try to give advice in using contraceptives. So this was like, for example, contraceptive pills, or the pills or condoms were strongly recommended and encouraged, or provided education of how to use this to the villages. So they would have a bus, small bus. The bus would go around and then distribute the contraceptive pills and so on, and they would provide some lectures of how to use them and so on. And not only that, the government actually has done the more radical way of trying to limit the number of babies. That is, actually, there were many instances of actually some conflict in a village, but anyway, that happened a lot. That is, these government buses will go around and tell the women to have a sterilization surgery operation. Is that the right word? Sterilization, yes. So this was kind of told by the government agency that this is the most efficient, which I guess is true, most efficient way, way of reducing or actually controlling the number of baby. And then so many, if you will, uneducated rural women would just, wow, this is, because the government actually provided some like benefits. They would give some, maybe a couple of boxes of sugar. They would give some like wheat flour. So they, they said, wow, this is great. The government is actually giving us like free food, and then, actually helping us to reduce the number of at least having no more babies, because contraceptives were not very widely known in Korea in those years. And also another form was like male sterilization. Okay, this went on until I would say mid 1980s or early 1980s. So usually the government agent would encourage the males to have sterilization operation at certain places where males gather a lot. Can you guess which place might be a very efficient one to have like multiple, if you will, multiple male sterilization operation? Where are the places where many Korean males go? Well, but that's, yes, they do go to pubs, I guess, right? But only mostly males, only males, and the number could be hundreds or thousands. Yes, I guess many males do go, but there, yes, military, yes, yes, military. But if you like the military, the soldiers would be very young, because most soldiers will be in the early 20s. So they wouldn't want to have their they wouldn't want to be sterilized because they do. But after the military service, all of them actually go for a certain period for reserve army training camp, right? 예비군. So I guess most of you who have been to the military, still that you have to have regularly regular train every year, right? So I don't know how long nowadays, but it's when where many males who have been in the army will be recalled to have a training for a week sometimes. I think it was a week for me when I was in the army and I has discharged from the military. And then what they do is they would say, well, if you do this male sterilization, this is great because it will, make you free to whatever. And then they say, well, you can get out of this training camp just today. If you've done it, you can just go. You don't have to stay here for 7 days. You'll be released today, and there's a good incentive. They don't want to be there for 1 week, and then they would give you milk and castella and all kinds of souvenirs. So many actually males have done their sterilization during the reserve camp. But that's the government was that much aggressive in trying to promote this family planning program. Okay, on the right, it says 딸 아들 구별 말고 둘만 낳아 잘 기르자. Can anyone in this classroom at KU translate this for the students who do not speak or read Korean? 자원에서, okay, voluntarily. I hope it's not Tilo. It's somebody else here. Yeah, okay, yeah. 누가? Someone? Yes, thank you. Very good. Okay. Let's see if she's really good.
Let's raise just 2 babies, not discriminating daughter, whether it's daughter or son. Let's raise 2 babies, not discriminating whether it's girls or boys.
Yes. Okay, right. So that shows that there was gender preference, and so it tried to tell the people that whether the gender of the baby is not important. Let's just limit the 2 because many couples this was in 1974, as you can see in the bottom, 1974. The government was trying to tell. The government knew that many couples had many babies because they want to have a boy, at least 1 boy. So if you had 3 daughters, they was just trying to have more babies until they have a boy. And sometimes it's not really very successful. You probably end up having 10 daughters, right? So they were saying that, well, do not discriminate. Whether it's a boy or girl, let's just have 2 and try to raise them well. That was the basic message of 1974. So they were actually giving actual numbers, and then so that what that meant was that some people who had 3 or 4 babies, after a few years later, they felt they were kind of savage, uncivilized, because more modernized people would have just 1 or 2 babies, and you ended up having 3 or 4 babies, and then wow, it's not very well educated, right? So that kind of indirect but real pressure was given to the people to have fewer babies. So the government role was very important. And then what happens in the 1980s? In the 1980s, on the left, it says 둘도 많다. which means 2 is too much. Okay, so in the 1960s they said, let's have 2. And then the government was trying to persuade people to a more extreme case. And they were saying, well, 2 is too much, that's probably it's better to have just 1, right? And then on the right, they actually provided the actual number of people, Korean population, about 40 million, like more than 40 million. And they were kind of really giving very strong message. This is going to endanger the Korean society. And it says, there's the picture on the bottom with many people crowded. It says, and then in the center it said, 하나씩만 낳아도 3천리는 초만원. That means that even with just one baby, Korean Peninsula will be heavily populated, very highly populated. So indirectly they were saying, well, you know, you might feel guilty having just one baby, right? There's one baby would actually lead to this major social crisis in South Korea, in Korea. I mean, I'm sorry, yeah. But when you say, okay, the map is the whole peninsula, but the focus was on the south, of course. Yeah, South Korea. This is South Korean government to the South Korean people. Okay, let me just finally. There's some couple more posters, but time's running out. In the 1990s, it says. 선생님, in the center it says, 선생님 착한 일 하면 여자 짝꿍 시켜주나요? It's like the government message has been kind of changed, shifted from the number of the baby to gender issue, sex ratio. The test question number 3, sex ratio. So it says it's kind of real diary from a baby, for a boy, elementary school boy, and it says, if I behave good, can I have female partner for a seat arrangement? Okay, so because there has been imbalance of male and female students in class, so some students might end up having a boy partner for their seat arrangement. So they say, well, this boy said that he will behave good, and maybe in the next week when we have rearrangement of the seats, can I have like female students as a partner for my seat arrangement? Because that shows that how sex ratio has become a very serious problem in the 1990s, and the government does not anymore talk about limiting the number of babies. Rather, they have shifted more focus onto sex ratio issue because they were beginning to realize that this could lead to a serious social problem in the long term. Okay, let me stop here. We'll come back next week. We'll try to finish up the population issues, and then, okay. See you later. 再见. Bye-bye. Yes.